Hi, everyone. I'm Carlota Pico from the Content Mix, and I'm excited to be here today with Tom Livingston, who is Talentful's head of marketing and has over 6 years of experience in marketing and communications. Welcome, Tom, and thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Tom, to get the interview started off, let's talk about your background, a bit about your company, and how you got into your current role.
Yeah, so I'll go back to the beginning, I guess. I graduated from university with an English literature and creative writing degree. And I wanted to look for some kind of creative roles. I think kind of naively, like a lot of people at the start of my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I got into some internships kind of in a couple of advertising agencies and doing some blog writing. And I started to take to that a little bit. And then I worked in a couple of startups, sort of blog writing there, and then converted to doing more of a kind of social media advertising role, and realizing that I could kind of combine a bit of the creativity with the data of social media advertising as well, and spent quite a few years of my life just kind of making Facebook adverts and Instagram adverts kind of over and over again. Slightly one-dimensional role, but I did really enjoy that for a time, and I was quite good at that. So I then managed to kind of take those skills and move into a more kind of broad marketing role. So I became a marketing manager at a big commercial dating app. Spent a couple of years there doing a much more general role. So at that point, there were still some social media adverts, but I did everything from content writing to drafting copy for billboards to some of the more technical things as well. And then after that, finally moved on to Talentful, where I am now. Where I'm head of marketing, have been for almost 2 years, although I'm starting to lose track of time a little bit, as everyone is at the moment. But almost 2 years head of marketing at Talentful.
Okay, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I am losing track of time. I'm assuming that you're referring to coronavirus and the lockdown and the quarantine that all of us are facing.
Yeah, it's somewhere between a year and 6 months and a year and 9 months at Talentful, I think.
Yeah, I'm somewhere in between last year and fast forwarding to the next 5 years after coronavirus. I don't really know.
Yeah.
I've lost track of the day and time that we currently live in.
Yeah.
You went from working at a dating app to now working at an HR company. What does marketing look like at an HR company? What are the different nuances one should be aware of when working in marketing for an HR company?
Well, in some ways, when I switched from the dating app to the recruitment company, I felt like there were some synergies, and I think obviously Talentful did as well, which is why I'm there. In that, it's still a case of people trying to attract other people. Admittedly, the reasons are a little bit different. One is dating and one is slightly more professional. But I think sometimes we can get a little bit bogged down in the nuances of different markets, and ultimately, good marketing is about being able to communicate with people effectively. So I definitely saw some synergies there.
Okay. So back in the day, you were matching singles, and now you're matching employees to new workspaces.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. I will be talking a little bit about Talentful and your role at Talentful. But before moving into that, I'd like to talk about what you think are the challenges and opportunities that come with working in Europe and in a European environment.
Yeah, so Talentful as a brand is quite sort of UK centric, but within the last year or so, we've launched both a Berlin office and a San Fran office, and then obviously in my previous role, that was that was an international dating app, so we had lots of different markets, and I learned quite a lot about those different markets in the process. I think what I've realised with Talentful is that if you can create a really strong tone of voice and a really strong brand, which people buy into, and they seem to with the Talentful brand, then I think from that stable foundation, it's a lot easier to then take that into different markets. and sort of start to approach those markets with a sort of softly approach. One thing I'm very cautious of is sort of attempting to jump into a market all at once and trying to do a sort of big launch all at once, because I think you have to sort of build your audience slowly.
Okay. Would you also say that adapting your communication to the local audience is also part of that strategy and is also very important? So, for example, you're from the UK, you're based out of London, I'm from Madrid, Spain, and although we're both communicating in English, our public holidays are different, our cultures are different. So, the way that, for example, Talentful might communicate to a Spanish audience could be completely different to the way that they're communicating to a UK audience.
Yeah, I think so. I absolutely agree. So I think it's a case of taking that brand platform you have, that stable brand foundation, and then adapting it for those markets. And I think it's kind of a case of respect, isn't it? I mean, marketing communications dumbed down to its very simplest form is you speaking to other people. It's you as a brand trying to have a conversation with other people. And I think where we quite often go wrong is through forgetting that and trying to approach it differently and not having a conversation. And in the same way, if you were having a conversation with friends, you would recognize and respect their different cultures or their beliefs or whatever it might be. I think as a brand, it's important to do that as well, because otherwise the message that people are getting is kind of like, I don't really care enough about you to have done my research and to speak your language.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the challenge and where it becomes more difficult is that when it's that kind of one-to-one conversation between peers, it's a lot easier to then just kind of understand the person you're speaking to or ask them questions about the research you want to do.
Yeah.
If I'm having a conversation with you now, Carlota, and I want to understand a little bit more about your culture, then I might just say to you, what are the cultural nuances in Spain and how do they differ from here? And we could have a conversation around that. Whereas as brands, we find it a bit harder to do that. To get something back from the audience is quite tricky. So I think it's definitely a case of doing the research up front if you can, finding a research partner. There are lots of different research partners out there, whether it's just sending sort of SurveyMonkey surveys or even Google surveys in its kind of very simplest form, or there are companies like Attest or there's a couple of others, Latana, I think, that you can kind of sign up to as a subscription research partner.
What about listening to your actual audience? So apart from relying on research companies to help you understand the different nuances of local markets, how are you also engaging with your potential local audience in those markets? Are you relying heavily on social media in order to talk and communicate with your target markets and your local audiences?
Yeah, I think the challenge again for brands is that, not only do brands sometimes not necessarily see it as a two-way conversation with people, but it kind of works both ways in that as a brand, you might attempt to have a conversation with your audience and they'll look at you and say, okay, this is a brand. I don't want to interact with the brand. And obviously there's a lot of research out there, current research into how much better sort of peer-to-peer communications work and how much better it is to rely on individual sort of word of mouth or referrals. And obviously that's quite difficult as a brand. And a lot of the time, I think we sort of put things out there, the number of times that I'm sure all marketing professionals have gone, okay, we're going to launch this competition or we're going to launch this thing and we'll sit back and wait for all the engagement to come in and just sort of see what happens. And we can wait for all the organic conversation to grow. And I think we kind of flatter ourselves a little bit there to think that people will engage in that conversation. And then what inevitably happens is you get one person, if you're lucky, replying a comment that actually doesn't give you much information. So I realize that that's the challenge. And there are various different ways that you can sort of get around that. One is, as I say, maybe trying to survey your audience, using a different kind of platform to try and engage with them rather than just sort of immediately assuming that they're going to engage with your content. Another one that has worked really well for us is promoting our content through the different people within our company. So rather than just putting it out on the Talentful page, we have a network of really, really engaged recruiters, about 100 recruiters who, I mean, we're quite fortunate in that they're really engaged with Talentful, the mission of what we're doing and what we're trying to achieve through our marketing and social media. So from that sense, it's really easy when we then say, hey, we've got this content. Do you guys mind sharing it out? It's then really easy to get them on board with that and get them posting and engaging with the Talentful brand. Mm-hmm. And what you'll find is that they can then sort of start to go and post things out and have conversations independently with people in their networks, because then you do have that peer-to-peer interaction. And they can come back to you and say, oh, I had this conversation with someone on my post and they thought this was really interesting.
That's super smart. So brand ambassadors, basically.
Brand ambassadors, yeah.
Okay.
And it takes a little bit of trial and error. I think experimenting with different content, experimenting with different ways of trying to get people within your company to be brand ambassadors.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. Well, I do want to talk about Insightful. I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and one of the achievements that's highlighted on there is that you led the launch of your candidate platform, Insightful, which drove 1,500 signups in the first month. What is Insightful, and what marketing tools did you use in order to attract those 1,500 signups in the very first month of it being live?
Yeah, so Insightful is it's a candidate platform to get matched to different tech companies, some of the best tech companies in the world. And how it works is that they will come to our website, they'll click onto Insightful, and they'll go through a psychometric quiz of, I think it's 32 questions, and be assigned a different personality type based on that. I think we've all done different psychometric personality quizzes before and all been given our results for those. But how this one differs is that once you then have your results for that, you will then be given a percentage match with these different companies based on, does your personality fit with the teams that you might be joining further down the line? So it's based on the kind of assumption that good teams should be balanced teams. So if you have, say, a team full of analyst personalities, the assumption there is that you then might want to maybe more of a kind of a leader personality or an action person or someone a bit more creative. So we launched that about a year ago. And as you say, it got really good reception to begin with. And I think our most effective way of marketing it was, again, it comes back to the brand ambassador selling. What we did was we created a load of different assets for our team. We had some really nice different creative assets of people kind of representing the different personalities. So we would have someone with sort of like multiple different arms coming out of them if they were the adaptable personality, or we had an entrepreneur who had a kind of astronaut's helmet illustrated around their head. So we created assets that we knew our team would enjoy and would want to share. And then we coordinated a kind of approach of everyone posting out at the same time. And it worked really well because we had, as I say, maybe 100 people on our team all sort of posting out when we gave them the green light to go ahead with that. All posting out with the assets that we'd given them, some kind of suggested copy for it. But we made sure we kept it kind of open so that our team could give their take on it. So I think the really effective way of promoting it for us was a combination of a coordinated, organized effort of you guys should post with these things at this time, but then also leaving a little bit of creative freedom so that these guys could be the marketers themselves. So that got a kind of initial wave of people in through LinkedIn. I had sort of connections messaging me saying that Talentful had covered LinkedIn with posts about Insightful and that it was all they were seeing, which obviously for a sustained period of time, you don't want to be spamming people, but I think to be making that kind of initial noise was really effective for us. And then we followed that up. We continued with, after that, lots of different social ads with those creative assets that we created in. So it was kind of a case of the work that we put in up front on the creative assets, we just kept reusing them. I mean, obviously a great marketing trick to use and reuse things as much as you possibly can do.
Absolutely. Repurposing is key. Hey, not only to keep the budget down, not spend that much, but also in terms of being able to use the same material over and over again and for different reasons and for different audiences. I actually took the test myself. I love personality tests, and I'm the innovator. So, from your expert opinion,
Congratulations.
sorry?
I congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Obviously, the adaptable one.
You are. So, we make a good team.
I had all the arms coming out of me doing different things.
Well, I was very happy with the results because I think it does describe me very well. So, congratulations on that also. I do want to talk about Insightful and ask about your opinion on what every team needs in order to succeed in new projects. And of course, this would be from your personal experience or from your opinion.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things that jump out to me immediately. So this is going to sound really obvious, but to take it down to the basics is talent in the first place, and then trust. So, I mean, I guess I would say this working now for a recruitment company, but I think the initial kind of hiring process is so important because if you have the right talent within your teams, and I found this, I'm very lucky to have an amazing team around me that I can work with. I found that, getting the right people in the first place is so crucial, because once you then have that talent, if you know that those people can work to their very best ability, then you can trust them to do so. And if you're confident in your own ability to hire the right people in the first place, and you bring them in knowing that they have that talent and they're not working to their fullest ability, then maybe at that point it's a case of saying, okay, this person has the ability, but what am I not doing that is empowering them to work in the best way? And that's when it might come back to that trust of, okay, I know this person has the talent. How can I sort of stop micromanaging them or take off whatever restrictions might be there and allow them to do their best work? So I think ultimately it boils down to those two things.
Very interesting. We are coming towards the end of our interview, but before we finish
Great.
up, I have one more section and
Yeah.
two questions pertaining to marketing that I really want to ask, although our time is limited. So, because you are headquartered in London, but have offices in Berlin and also in San Francisco, and plus you work for an HR company, I do want to ask you about Brexit and the effect that Brexit had on your marketing strategy.
Brexit has been kind of looming over the UK, and the impact has been looming over the whole of Europe for a while now. And I think we would certainly say that it has an impact, but we've been able to prep ourselves step by step. And from a marketing point of view for Talentful, we've done a lot of, in the last couple of years, a lot of kind of foundational brand marketing work. So a lot of it is a little bit more high levels, what we believe in, what our mission is, those sorts of things. And, we really stick to those. So they don't necessarily get changed by a situation like Brexit. So we believe in empowering people to do their best work. We believe that putting them in the right companies will enable them to do so. And although Brexit might sort of impact on that slightly, it might make it slightly harder to do so. I'm sure there are plenty of people in the recruitment teams within Talentful that will tell you it's definitely impacting on that. But I don't think overall it impacts on that heavily. And as I say, because we've had time to prepare for that, I don't think it's had as much of an impact as, say, the current situation has, where things change pretty much overnight, and then it's really a case of, okay, how can we pivot our marketing to make sure that we're supporting Talentful in the best way?
And by current, you're referring to COVID-19, the current situation being COVID-19 that has completely interfered with our life and our strategies literally from night to day. So
the situation that must not be named, I feel like it has such an impact on people that we've found a way of referring to it as this current situation, or these unprecedented times, or the new normal, almost to avoid, as you say, saying the words COVID.
yeah. Scary times. We're going to have to see how the new normal is defined going forward. We are at the end of this section where we've been talking about marketing. Before we move on, I do want to quote the CEO of HubSpot, who said the following: what separates good content from great content is a willingness to take risks and push the envelope, end quote. Taking it to a marketing level, what do you think separates good marketing from great marketing?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned definitely over the last few years of my career is that the temptation to keep making noise is always there, but that kind of good marketing can just be things that people are posting for the sake of it. And certainly at Talentful recently, we've tried to focus a little bit more on the quality of what we're saying rather than just the quantity of putting things out there over and over. And that should be balanced with the consistency of making sure that people have a brand that they can engage with. I mean, if you start talking to them and then you drop off the next day because you're spending so long perfecting your next comms, obviously then they're going to forget about you and you're not going to be top of mind anymore. I think finding a rhythm to get into where you know what your tone of voice is, you know how you can make people remember you, and you know how you can do it on a consistent basis, but making sure that you're not just putting out generic waffle for the sake of it, I think is definitely the way forward.
So creating a lasting impression.
I think so, yeah. And I think that comes down to creativity. And I think the HubSpot CEO referencing taking risks there. I think creativity will often lead you to take risks and do something a little bit different. It doesn't mean you have to take risks, and I don't think that needs to be interpreted as, okay, everything we do has to be really dangerous or really out there. There are certain brands that do that really well. Brewdog, for example, are really out there with their marketing. There are a couple of others. Oatly have a really clearly defined tone of voice, but it doesn't mean that everyone has to take the same sort of really ballsy approach to their marketing. I think it's more about being creative in the first place.
Right. Definitely. It's more about testing things out, seeing how strategies are, also giving enough time for a strategy to actually work, because as I often say, Rome wasn't created overnight and things don't just happen overnight either. And sometimes it takes a lot of patience to actually see if something's going to work out according to what one wants.
Yeah, and I think, to be quite honest, I think as marketers, we quite often get bogged down in the kind of technicalities of, who is the exact audience and when is this going out? What are my best times for posting? And we forget to trust our creative instincts a little bit. And I think the first marker point of, are you putting out a good comms, should be, am I really excited about this? When I draft something, I always try and make sure that I'm happy with it, because I think sometimes we ignore that and then we see, have we ticked all the other boxes? Is it going out at the right time? Yes. Is it going to the right audience? Technically, yes. So technically I can't fault it, but there's just something not quite right that I can't put my finger on. Mm-hmm. And I think if you have that feeling, then that should be your first marker point, really.
Yeah. It's like the feeling of an entrepreneur, right? When they're launching a new idea and they just have that excitement boiling inside them, but they don't really know if it's going to work or not. And so it's about testing it out and making sure, of course, that you're ticking off the right boxes. But beyond that it also is very exciting and that you feel very positive that it's going to make other people feel as excited as you're feeling at that very moment.
Exactly. And I think in marketing as a field, there's a lot of imposter syndrome because we have a lot of soft skills that take time to build, and they're not necessarily as easily demonstrable as some other skills in other fields. So we don't necessarily believe in ourselves. But I think in the situations where we're putting copy out, that feeling comes from the creative instincts that are built over time. You don't just wake up with creative instincts. I think through years of working in marketing and understanding what works and what doesn't, understanding different audiences, you hone those instincts. And so if you have a feeling about something, it's probably coming from somewhere good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, we are moving towards the last section of our interview today, which is a set of rapid fire questions. To get the section started off, I'd like to ask you for an app or tool that you can't work without or that you can't live without, because that's completely valid as well.
So I'll give you three here, actually. 3 for the price of 1. So right now, Slack. Right. Obviously, I feel like I have to say Slack because now that we're all working remotely, we have to be in touch with each other constantly. So how could we live without something like Slack? So Slack is one of them. Grammarly is another one that I use. So I really believe in the power of good language. And I think I'm quite good with language, but there's always things that can slip through the net. So it's good to have a little grammar checker like Grammarly installed on things. So that's another one. And another one is Adobe Spark. We have quite a lean, small team, and we don't have a lot of design resource in-house. And Adobe have released a program called Spark, which some people may know, some may not, but it is basically like a Photoshop for dummies, and it helps you put together designs really easily. And someone like myself who doesn't actually have any design training can actually use it and make templates. So bit of a godsend.
That's a very good tip. I didn't know that existed. I tend to use Canva for all of my design work, which I'm assuming is similar to Adobe Spark as well.
Yeah, Spark has saved my life though.
Excellent. What about a marketing influencer in Europe that you follow and that inspires you?
So I follow a guy called Stephen Bartlett, who a lot of people might have heard of. He's the founder of the agency Social Chain, and particularly on LinkedIn, he's very vocal, posts quite consistently, and has a lot of really interesting things to share. So I'd recommend him.
Okay, excellent. And the last question of today's interview will be a valuable European group or event that you feel provides you with a lot of good information, but also a good return on investment.
Yeah, so a couple of, I think they're quite UK-based ones here, but I went to an event not so long ago, back when we could go to events, called One Question, the premise of which was that there was one question that was consistently asked to various different fields. So the question for that one was, does purpose drive profit? Which I think is a really interesting question. And they asked it to various different fields. So experts in marketing, experts in media, political experts, various different, I think they even had someone from the military. So it's really nice to get different kind of perspectives on the same question. So I thought that was a good format. And then there's another one, quite a small event currently, I think, but it's called Inspired. And they run some really interesting workshops, talks. They invited me along to one of their marketing events. So I thought that was really good.
Awesome. So does purpose drive profits?
The answer was mixed.
Okay.
It was a really interesting one, but I think the answer is, if as a company you have a very strong purpose already, then great, that's going to integrate into everything you do. But the real danger is if you don't have a really clearly defined purpose. And by purpose, we're talking about something good. You know, you stand for sustainability, you stand for, you might be a charity, whatever else it is. If you don't have one, then shoehorning a purpose in afterwards because you think it might be good for your profit is probably not a good idea.
Okay. And could you remind me what that event is called?
That's One Question.
One Question. Okay. For all the people that are tuning in to our podcast today, that's One Question and Insight or Inspire.
Inspired Business Media, I think it is.
Okay. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Tom, for joining us today on the Content Mix. You provided great insights, very valuable tips, and I thoroughly enjoyed our interview.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it too.
Awesome. I'm hoping that perhaps we'll have a follow-up interview sometime in the near future and we can keep on talking about purpose because that's a topic that I'm sure that our listeners would love to learn more about.
Let's do it.
And for everybody listening in today, thank you so much for joining us on the Content Mix. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out thecontentmix.com. We'll be publishing interviews just like this one every week, so keep on tuning in. And until next time, stay well and stay safe. Bye.